We looked at firewalls. Let's look at another way of protecting the network. You know, so many people are road warriors. They're working from on the road, they're working from home, they're telecommuters. How do we protect the network when those folks try to connect? There's a framework called network access protection. It's not a single product. And most vendors, most of the big operating system vendors have some way of implementing this. But there's a framework of many services that come together to protect the network, usually when remote connections try to come in. And it has a lot of moving parts, but here's some of the parts that are involved. It starts with a central network access protection server, usually a server running a service on it. So like for Microsoft Windows Server 2012, it's the Network Protection and Access Services, NPAS. But anyway, you've got this central server, this central NAP server, and the NAP server will have policies on it that basically say under what conditions client computers can connect. Now, usually NAP is used to force client computers that are connecting to prove their health. And the health is like, do you have the latest antivirus update? Do you have at least this particular service pack and patch level? Do you have your firewall set a certain way? Do you have at least these updates? Do you have at least this anti-spyware, anti-malware update? And the client tries to make a connection, like it's wireless connection, which means now we've got somebody sitting in a lobby or even at their desk trying to make a wireless connection. But it's even though it's very, very, very short range, it still is not directly connected to the LAN. It's trying to connect into the LAN. Or we have someone who comes and plugs into a switch. I've walked in with my laptop, I'm going to plug into a switch. Or I'm VPNing across the internet. I'm connecting to a VPN server. Or I'm dialing up, using a dial-up modem because maybe there's not internet where I'm at, so I'm going to make a dial-up connection. And I can even do that across a cellular network. So I dial up. All of these enforcement points, these points of access, basically put me on hold. And they go and ask the central network access protection server. And typically that server is also something called a radius server. Radius server basically just requires users or computers, usually users, to authenticate before it allows them onto the network. And these wireless access point switch, VPN server, dial-up server, even DHCP server, there are a variety of different implementations. Basically ask, okay, what's the policy? And then the NAP server will say, okay, the policy is that the server, or the client that's connecting has to have this, 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 and this to prove its health. Got to have this patch, that antivirus, this firewall configuration, whatever it is. And the request is sent to this client that's trying to connect. Now the client actually will have a little tiny service, a little agent running on it that takes the policy and goes, oh, I've got to prove this. And it will basically produce something, a form of proof, which is then forwarded along back to the NAP server, and the NAP server says, okay, yeah, let them on. Usually using the radius protocol, but it can use other kinds of protocols. But so anyway, the NAP server, the radius server, has said to the WAP, the switch, the VPN server, the dial-up server, yeah, they're okay, let them on. Only then is that connection allowed to go past that point. Now, you've seen something similar, but not with the health. Whenever you've gone to a hotspot or a hotel, and you make a connection, but you can't go anywhere until you open a browser and actually log on. That's like a very simple implementation of radius. NAP takes radius one step farther. Not only do you have to log on, either the computer, the user, or both, but your computer has to certify, has to prove that it has a certain level of health before it's allowed to connect to the network. And the NAP server here can sometimes go and query a directory service server to authenticate the user, in this case like a Microsoft domain controller or a TACAX server or some server that has the usernames and the passwords or the authentications. And it can also then keep all of its logs on another server, and it can all be the same server or it can be separate, and it can save all of its accounting logs so that we can see exactly who got on, what they did, what protocol they used, how long they were on, et cetera, et cetera. Very often the authentication part and the accounting part are moved off to other servers. They don't have to be. They can all be on the same server as the Radius server. So this is the network access protection infrastructure. It takes a fair amount of doing to actually implement, but larger organizations will implement it to protect them from all of the hundreds, thousands of employees coming and going with hundreds or thousands of laptops and mobile devices attempting to connect, either directly, wirelessly, or across the internet or a dial-up connection. The next thing we're going to talk about is something fun called a honeypot.